When the cool moon of an alpine night in the 1920s had yet to illuminate the snow-laden huts of the Arosa Valley, it was quietly superseded by a rhythm of thought clearer than frost and lighter than starlight. The air was suffused with a faint scent of pine and the crisp bitterness of a dying hearth. Within a chamber shrouded by heavy, dark curtains, where the faint cracking of distant glaciers could be heard, a man with a gaze reflecting a profound perception of the world's solitude quietly spread his empty hands. He was not plotting a declaration of war against the stubborn adherents of the particle school. Instead, within his mind, honed to acute sensitivity by long observation of undulating beauty, he repeatedly contemplated the philosophical metaphors of Indian Vedanta regarding the unity of Atman and Brahman. This sage had witnessed all the wildest fissions of physics' so-called magnificent era, yet what he craved most now was to return to that initial primal unity undisturbed by the senses. He is Erwin Schrödinger, a titan of quantum mechanics, an intellectual sentinel who chose rebellion at the peak of reason, exiling himself within the caverns of philosophy for decades. In later biographies, he is often depicted as the enigma represented by that cat of superimposed life and death, yet in life, during these silent nights, he quietly made peace with a sense of marginalization destined to accompany him always. Facing the sieges of the Nazi era and profound skepticism toward his interpretations of quantum mechanics, he did not choose vociferous defense. Rather, beneath a dying lamp, he mended the ultimate dream within his heart, a dream of order, reality, and redemption. This is a story of how convergence bursts forth with power, and how waves transform into nobility. Tonight, amidst the gently flickering firelight and this story you need not strive to remember, let us walk into his true life. Schrödinger's beginning was imbued with a luminous quality unique to fin de siècle Vienna, where cultural interplay and artistic flair wove a pale golden foundation of pure German logic and agile poetic talent, all under the doting brilliance of his father's rigorously erudite tradition. As a genius born at the crossroads of reason and sensibility, naturally endowed with the potential to pierce through the structures of nature, he inherited a micro-world that was chillingly austere, preoccupied with sacred covenants and the gambits of destiny. In the Austria of that time, morning bells echoed with the resonance of strict mentors' footsteps. In the corners of libraries reddened by hearth fires, he learned to use his vision to see through the superimposed layers of fate behind every physical phenomenon. Young, brilliant, and possessing an intellectual arrogance that drew stares from his peers, he rejected superficial socialization in the public square, turning instead to the embrace of volumes filled with natural laws, Schopenhauer's philosophy, and Spinoza's statutes, using them to measure the soul's breadth. This almost pathological pursuit of the world's truth became the first incurable psychological wrinkle in his life, and the sole armor with which he would later guard reality amidst chaotic times. By his 20s, he was already adept at judging the purity of colors through vibrational frequencies. In that stone chamber filled with the scent of agarwood and logical gambits, he learned to use a gentle yet barbed wisdom to dissolve all zeitgeist hostility. He understood that prosperity is not a gift bestowed, but a sacred logic that grows naturally from an utter respect for natural laws and duty. If early self-study was a tempering of will, then his decision to abandon all particle-based obsessions during that cold alpine summer retreat, seeking instead a continuous elegant wave function, was the practical validation that pushed Schrödinger's continuous aesthetics to its zenith. In that endgame concerning microscopic randomness and macroscopic certainty, particles and waves, fate dealt him the heaviest and most perilous stakes. Overturning all prevailing empirical models of the time, he resolutely transformed his searing intuition into an ultimate intellectual journey, replacing endless experimental guesswork with exhaustive rational calculations. In those deep nights so quiet only the sound of snowflakes meeting the windowpane could be heard, through extremely precise accounting of vibrational characteristics and complex spaces, he issued silent orders that stabilized the order of wave mechanics. This mode of transition had no gunsmoke, yet amidst an era restless with ideological strife, it forged power into an intellectual long march walking on the edge of conscience. He would often patrol the inner domains of his mind at night. Upon discovering a definition of beauty off by a hair, he would without complaint demand a reweaving of destiny's drafts, as if he were not merely deriving an equation, but sculpting a precision logical timepiece dedicated to history. At that moment, Schrödinger was the most lucid and loneliest artisan in the scientific world. Accepting all of the Copenhagen school's mockery with silence, this extreme focus made him like a marble clock tower, solitary and looming, yet unshakable. To the wise, the pinnacle of power often manifests as the penetration of truth. Erwin Schrödinger gradually realized that when he ultimately receded from the forefront of physical interpretation to write the revolutionary What is Life, what he gained was not merely stability, but a nihilism that saw through the rise and fall of all things. In his Dublin stone room, filled with the fragrance of amber and stacked with comparative manuscripts of ancient Greek philosophy, he silently observed the details of scholars who had once promoted or betrayed him. He discovered that those scientific ideals, once so grand as to be arrogant, appeared fragile before the cold negative entropy mirror of life, a fragility more potent than any divine oracle. This transition from physicist back to natural philosopher was fraught with intellectual struggle, yet it imbued him with a nearly transparent, cool serenity. He began returning more frequently to his academic origin. In that secret chamber sounding only with the friction of an oil lamp, he began recalibrating those Vedantic texts he had memorized countless times. In his diary he noted, "I once thought I was building an edifice. Now I find I am merely searching, amidst the desolate gaps of memory, for an intersection that allows the soul to cease its fall." This expansiveness, born from seeing through the transience of material ambition, became his hardest armor in his later years, allowing him to face the impact of emerging biology and the curtain call of his era with the equanimity of a setting sun sinking into the sea. Schrödinger's final phase was spent in an extremely solemn silence imbued with a sage's luster. It was the eve of a dawn where the gods were gradually receding. Vienna's fine rain fell soundlessly, washing the stone steps into a translucent, somber gray. By now, the physicist's body had become extremely light from what seemed like eons of vigilant watching. His once heavy formal suits now hung loosely upon his frail skeletal frame, or rather upon a will that had almost become a shadow. He understood that the age of reason belonging to the classical order was approaching its end along with his increasingly slow, heavy breathing. In his final conscious moments, rejecting the suggestion to return to the new temple for coronation, he requested the spirit wind carry him to that terrace overlooking distant cooking fires, to one last time hear an inner tide belonging to him alone, without an audience. He closed his eyes, and with those hands that had held 10,000 scepters of authority and caressed 10,000 star charts, he traced an arc of completeness across his chest for the last time. At that moment, no city bells chimed. The late wind carried away the great hermit's final sigh. He left no vast family legacy, but left only this searing, conscientious wisdom that spans a century, the heaviest fragment of a dream left to the world. Even half a century after his physical passing, Erwin Schrödinger's name remains the sole sanctuary for many insomniac seekers in the deep night. When people gaze upon his iconic, breathtakingly rigorous profile of wave mechanics in modern galleries, it is as if they can still feel an old man whispering by the dying lamp of reason in that damp, ancient night of the past. What he left behind was not a towering pillar of triumph, but a spiritual template for self-restraint and noble departure. He teaches us that no matter how trivial your life may be, no matter your predicament, inner tranquility is your sole and eternal sanctuary. Please believe that within every life, there is a personal Arosa hut. A marginal space requiring no explanation to the world, only dialogue with oneself. May Schrödinger's tranquility and vastness transform into the softest ripples in your dreams, carrying you toward that quietest and most boundless shore of the heart. Good night, and may good dreams always be with you.